Yeah, hi there. These comments are for SA. I'm just using your initials for privacy purposes, and I am Michael, your English 106 instructor here at California State University, San Bernardino. So you just completed the essay number 1, in which case you are comparing and contrasting your own writing process with that of Marius. So your paper, it just wasn't really a tightly controlled compare and contrast essay, to be honest with you. So when I went through and scored everything, you just didn't do very well. You got 25 points out of 40. This is a 63 out of 100. So it just wasn't really a tight, what we call coherent compare and contrast. So let me compare what you wrote with a thesis from another writer in the class. So you say in the beginning, near the end of your first paragraph, you say, verification of personal skills and intuitions to the reference sample of an expert will be useful to everyone, regardless of the acquired practical volume. It must be said that such carefully planned and at the same time easy to master tips have been very useful and attractive for my training activities. The vocabulary you're using, I'm going to be honest with you, it sounds like you're using GRE or GMAT vocabulary, but it's just over the top. You were overly formal, your words were too obscure, and it still wasn't exactly clear what you were comparing or contrasting. So let me compare what you wrote with what this guy says in his introduction. He says, Richard Marius in his article on writing drafts gives us the method he uses when it comes to writing. Marius undergoes a lot of different steps and processes when it comes to putting a paper together to make sure it is as good as it can be. As Marius takes different steps throughout each draft of writing, I take a much different approach to my writing as compared to his. Based off of a method I used to write a paper I did in high school, Marius' method and my method of process of writing are very different within the first, second, and third drafts of the paper. So it's clear from the way he frames his thesis, it's very clear what's going to happen in the topic sentences, but it's not very clear what's going to happen in your body paragraphs based on the thesis that you write in the first paragraph. So then you go to another paragraph, you say the author's next advice to conduct reflective examination of the text is also very important. But by saying very important, that doesn't really address the task. The task is, how similar or different are you to this process? So if you said something like this, if you said in terms of the reflective examinations of papers, Marius and I are very similar in how we approach our draft. If you said that as a topic sentence, then it would be more clear as to what you're actually doing. Now, also, I found quite odd is you didn't really include any direct quotes from the writer at all, and even it wasn't clear when you were summarizing and paraphrasing the writer because you didn't really use any in-text citations in the body paragraphs, so it was tough. It was hard to really distinguish between when you were discussing Marius' ideas or when you're just talking about writing generally, or were you actually talking about your own process or Marius' writing process. So there was a lot of confusion with how you framed this particular writing assignment. So the main thing is the video that I sent you by InGrade. In that video, I went over the process of how you can structure your essays so it's a compare and contrast type essay. I would watch that video, even though you can't revise this paper. I think watching that video is going to be important because in our second writing assignment, you're also comparing a fad or style that you adopted, and you're showing how similar or different it is to what Durf says in his cartoon. So you're still managing or trying to manage this type of organization in your writing, so you definitely want to get a little bit better control over the compare and contrast assignment. Now, don't get me wrong, you had really good sentence style, you had good vocabulary, you had there's a lot of good points in the writing. You'll notice, if you look at the rubric, when it comes to your sentence style and your grammar errors, you were perfect in those areas. But when it comes to your The other parts of the assignment, you just didn't do very well in those areas. So overall, your score here is 63% out of 100.